Hello, everybody. My name is Jim, and this is my reading wrap up for April 2024. I had to wait a little bit to record and upload this wrap up because April, as I predicted, was pretty much just like March. So I'm not going to go too much into the woe is me, but when it rains, it pours. My cat, my boy cat, has had to deal with two bladder infections to the point of me having to talk myself out of creating a GoFundMe because, oh my gosh, vet bills stack up anyway. And so if it's an emergency, it just compounds. Luckily, he's okay, but I've been spending most of April waiting for him to and listening to him pee. Like I said, he's fine, but I'm hoping to not have to take him to the emergency vet anymore. We cannot have this. Not right now. Anyway, with that aside, I read 4 books this month. I DNF'd one, and I'm going to talk about that one first. Tell Me That You Love Me, Junie Moon by Marjorie Kellogg. So this was a movie kind of back in the day that featured Liza Minnelli and 2 actors that I'm sure were super popular in that time, but I don't know who they are. And the book is not in my hands right now, so I can't see who the actors are. But it stood out to me as a book that could be a romance, but reading it and finding out that it's more about 3 friends who were put in the hospital for a variety of reasons and have formed a friendship and decided that they wanted to live together. And so like the whole book is about their plans to ultimately live together, or at least that's most of the book because I got halfway through. There's humor involved besides their backstories and the reasons why they were put in the hospital. It was a pretty lighthearted, kind of funny book, or it was meant to be. The reason why I DNF'd is, number one, it took too long to get to the point, kind of like me in my videos. And number 2, I did not care about the guys. This book, it feels like the title is a line in the book, and I'm assuming that the love interest or the person who says the line is one of the men on the cover of this book, either Arthur or Warren. I did not like Warren at all. Arthur had his moments. He was sweet sometimes, but in general, their attitudes, especially about women, just didn't really like it. And I wasn't too invested in either of those guys. And Junie Moon, she was okay, but even still, she wasn't that interesting to where she could carry the whole book by herself. So I did end up DNFing this book at around 50% because I just really didn't care who said the titular line. The next book that I read in April is Crossroads, Gold Dust Out of the Darkness by Dustin Rhodes. Fun fact about me, I used to watch wrestling. Gold Dust was always a character that I was interested in, but when he came onto the scene, I was honestly too little to really understand who he was, why he wore a wig, this and that. But later on in life, and this is kind of something that other people have said as well, later on when he kind of made his comeback, I guess, and I watched him more in the present day, I appreciated Gold Dust. And listening to recent interviews that Dustin Rhodes has taken part in, I appreciate the man behind Gold Dust now. And I wanted to read a little bit more about how he became Gold Dust and some of his reflections on some of the decisions that were made in the WWE. Unfortunately, I gave this memoir a 1-star review, not because of his life, but because I don't think that this memoir did it justice. I think that it may have been written too soon. It was written in 2010. I think now, at this stage in his life, with all the stuff that's come to light about Vince McMahon and his attitude around the LGBTQIA+, it does kind of raise a discussion where this is a straight man. Dustin Rhodes is a straight man. He played this character who was once meant to be, per Vince McMahon, over the top and hypersexual to get laughs, and he was called every derogatory name that you could possibly think of. Another part of this memoir was about his addiction to prescription medication and alcohol. All of that was happening while he was expected to perform at the top of his game. And there's so much that I want to talk about, but I don't know if this is the video for it because it's not in the memoir. It didn't really go in depth into anything. Pretty simplified, like, this is what happened and it was awesome. Moving on. And two, there was a part about the rats, and I forgot. I honestly didn't even know. I think maybe I remember this, maybe I don't. He used to use rats as props, and there was one that passed away and he brushed over it. He was the reason the rat passed away, and it made me upset. Moving on to the next one, we have Trophy Hunt by CJ Box. This is another book with some unfortunate happenings with animals, but it's in the summary for the book. It's in the premise. Joe Pickett and his daughters Sheridan and Lucy go on a fishing trip in Wyoming, and they come across this dead moose who has its skin peeled back. They kind of think nothing of it at first. There are laws that say that when you go hunting, you're not supposed to leave an animal carcass just laying out there. You're supposed to take it. Shortly after that incident, there are cattle who receive the exact same fate. That is when things start to get a little bit suspicious. One thing I do like about this intro, even though it contains animal death, is that these animals are taken seriously. This book was okay. I did give it 3 stars. The reason my star rating dropped was because this book gave things away a little bit too soon, I thought. I feel like the mystery may have been maintained for some readers, which is good, but there was one sentence that I picked up on that said, "Oh, okay. That's what it's going to be." And yeah. So I was a little disappointed. I was a little disappointed in that. There was another thing that is a mystery pet peeve of mine that I'm not going to say, but it happened in this. It's a pet peeve. I didn't like it, and it dragged my star rating down too. There was another scene where this gratuitous depiction or description of a young woman's body, every single part of her was described. CJ Box, so he's good at painting a picture. He gives you just enough detail to for you to understand where you are in the world and what things look like. He doesn't go too deep. But for this young woman, for whatever reason, he decided to describe every inch of her, and of course she was nude. And then he started comparing her to his daughters, who were very young. He was kind of implying, I guess, that this woman was like a daughter to him. But if she is a daughter to you, why are you looking that hard? That bugged me, to have her described that way and then have her treated as if she could be one of his daughters. As a main character, I wasn't that big a fan of Joe Pickett, but I loved his wife. Mary Beth is the reason I would pick up another one of CJ Box's books, but I will say that Trophy Hunt encouraged me to want to look for Harlan Coben's books again. I read one of his books last year, Don't Let Go. I enjoyed it enough to where Harlan Coben is on my radar. So this book has encouraged me to pick up one more, another one of Harlan Coben's books. I don't know what that says about this book specifically, but I don't know. I might pick up more of CJ Box's books in the future. Like I said, this book wasn't awful. I enjoyed Mary Beth. The plot was pretty good, even though I found it a bit predictable. I think other people would enjoy it more. I did not like that gratuitous description, but also it pushed me toward Harlan Coben again. I don't know what that says other than y'all are going to get some more Harlan Coben later this year, I guess. Moving on into the next two books, they received the exact same star rating. Both got fives, perfect fives. But just like The Color Purple and Mr. Bridge, there is one that I'm going to put over the other. So I'm going to talk about The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky first. This is the story of Charlie. He's a high school freshman. He is writing letters to an anonymous friend, and he's really just talking about his daily life with his family and his friends Patrick and Sam. He's a character that I relate to pretty well, and I really hope that I didn't miss anything as far as his parents were concerned, but I thought that they were realistic. I thought that they were decent parents. There were some scenes where I didn't like the portrayal of one of his family. Not that I didn't like that family member. I just didn't like how that family member was written and treated in the family. That's like my only gripe for this whole thing. But I think that his family was solid, or at least his parents were. And I feel like I grew up in a solid household, and thank goodness. Because I feel like if I didn't have the parents that I had, I would have spiraled pretty early on because of all of the stuff that happened outside of their control. There were things that happened. You know, Charlie wanted to be involved with the cool kids. He befriended some seniors. He went to parties. He was a lot more outgoing than than I was. But the comparison there was that there was so much going on that as a teenager he had to adjust to, or figure things out outside of, parents and teachers who could give him proper education and let him know, like, this is how the world works. He just kind of had to experience it for himself. And there were a lot of times where I had to do the same growing up. There were some complaints in the reviews for this book that it seemed a bit like a list of all the bad things that could possibly happen to a teenage kid, all happening at one time in this book. And while I can see that, I can see how there was so much bad, or maybe not necessarily bad in some cases, but just really difficult situations that Charlie had to navigate. I mean, I found it pretty realistic because I feel like my teenage life was pretty shitty and I had to navigate a lot of crap myself. And sometimes it did feel like it was just an everyday occurrence where something new bad would happen. That's what made Charlie so great and why I connected to this book so well. I've heard from multiple booktubers that people find this book corny or cheesy. I didn't. And maybe that's because I'm older. So like if a teenager were to read this now, then maybe they would think that it's cheesy. But I thought that Charlie was just kind of like this, I don't know, intelligent, somewhat free-spirited. He was able to let things in to his life. He was willing to try new things and be adventurous. I don't know. I thought it was pretty cool. I liked it. I didn't think it was corny or cheesy at all. But again, that could just be my age. I don't know. It could be because this was written in 1999 or published in 1999, and I was a youngster back then. I was a kid. So maybe that's it. Maybe that's the connection there. But all that to say, I love this book. Again, my only gripe was about that one family member who I thought was mistreated. And also, I loved Patrick. I loved his character. I appreciated the struggles that he went through. And I always love a good book that has good side characters whose stories that I can follow too. That it's not just about the main character. I know that he's the focus. I know that Charlie's the focus, but having these side characters be just as well-rounded as he is, even though they don't have as much page time and it's not from their perspective, is worth a lot. I have to move on to the number one book that I read this month, or in the month of April, and is honestly probably the best book that I've read so far this year, and it's probably going to make it on a bunch of top lists, I'm sure, by the end of 2024. It's James by Percival Everett. This is a retelling of The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain. However, it is from James's parentheses Jim's perspective. He goes by Jim through the book. Jim is a slave. If you're familiar with The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, that's who Jim is. He lives with his family, who is also enslaved in this town of Hannibal. There comes a time where he is about to be sold to someone else and separated from the very people who have kept him strong. His family is his rock, just as he is their rock. You know, they have such a good relationship, and I loved reading their interactions together. But because he's about to be sold, he decides, you know what, I can't do this. I'm gonna go. So he ends up being a runaway. And at the same time, Huckleberry Finn, who Jim is familiar with, he ends up running away as well. And that complicates the situation because, of course, as a slave, being a runaway is bad enough. Add on top of that kidnapping and or murder charges. You know, these white people, they could have slapped anything on him, and it would, like, he could sneeze and they could say something and harm him. I'm using that light term because of YouTube, but we know what I mean. As a slave in this time period, and this is something that I struggled with while reading this book, because there were moments. So to give you an example that happened early on in the book, you kind of learn about Jim's dialect and how he presents himself to white people in the story versus how he presents himself to fellow slaves in the story. His dialect changes. At first, you know, I was chuckling to myself about that because for a split second, it was kind of funny that, you know, he was this really intelligent guy, and he was like, these idiots, you know, they don't know just how smart I am. You know, it was kind of funny in that way, but at the same time, there was this tension that kind of undercut it, you know, where it's like you start to understand this is why he has to do this. This is why he has to speak to them a certain way as to be not threatening and, you know, not come across as smarter than or better than. Like I said, anything he did, they could have harmed him for it. And it made me wonder, like, should I be laughing at this? Should this be funny to me? Should I be chuckling at all? So it was kind of complicated. It was my natural instinct to chuckle at the fact that he was basically pulling the wool over their eyes to not show his intelligence, but then deep down you understand why he had to do that and why it was more about survival and protecting himself than it was just to, you know, be funny and haha, fooled you. You know, that it's something that made this book so complicated. And there were so many points in this story where I had that tug of war with myself where I was like, should I be feeling this emotion or should I be feeling something else? There were multiple times where, quite honestly, I was too shocked to show any other emotion other than being frozen and stunned. Yes, I guess there are funny moments, even though I'm questioning that right now. I don't mind that I had these complicated feelings while reading it, because I think when reading something like this about a subject that isn't easy, that isn't comfortable, I think it's fair to let yourself feel that sort of complication and that sort of tug of war, that weirdness, that awkwardness, because, you know, it just helps you. It helps you get through things. Even though I'm having a hard time getting through this review. But no, I really did enjoy this book. I do have to give it one criticism, though, because I have to do this for every book. And that is the ending felt a little less polished than the first. So this was split into 3 parts. Parts 1 and 2, perfect. Part 3 felt a little bit unpolished. It felt a little too raw, not so much in the subject matter, but just kind of like the writing style, the grammar, the spelling. There were some errors there, some repetitive phrases that I picked up on that I don't think were intentional. And I feel like, maybe Percival Everett was trying to just get through the book and get it done. But part 3 was just as important as parts 1 and 2. So I don't know. That probably wasn't the case. Maybe it was just oversight, but it didn't detract from my overall full experience of reading this book. It was amazing. This will certainly be on my top list at the end of this year. Like I said, this is the best book that I've read so far. So even with like the errors and the repetition at the end, it didn't detract so much. And just to be fair, I did read the physical copy of this book, and I feel like if I listened to the audio format of this, then that wouldn't have been an issue. So I'm not gonna, put too much weight into that. But yeah, this was a knockout book for someone who has read The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, didn't remember a lot of it, but was reminded of a lot through Jim's perspective and learned a lot of new things. A very solid retelling, if, I could undersell this book any more than I feel like I have. I don't think that this review did it justice, but it is a great read if you want to pick it up and read it for yourself. And a lot of other people agree on Goodreads as well. So if you were interested in reading James or any of the other books that I mentioned today, their Goodreads links are in the description below. Click on those, head on over to the retailer of your choice if you're feeling brave, or go to your library or use your library app and check them out if they are available. If you enjoyed this video for whatever reason, do leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Otherwise, I've been Jim. You've been great. Happy reading.